Thank you for joining us for today's Healing Perspectives lecture with Dr. Gina Serraiocco. This free lecture is brought to you through a generous gift from Roberta E. Newstatter. My name is Dr. Akil Palanisamy. I'm a physician at Sutter's Institute for Health and Healing in Sacramento. Today's lecture is being live streamed and recorded to our YouTube channel. It will be available for replay after the event. Our YouTube channel is included in the chat box. So before we get started, I wanted to go over some quick housekeeping to help you enjoy your experience today and to prepare you for this fantastic presentation that's upcoming. So please note, today's lecture is for informational purposes only. Everyone's health situation is unique, and we ask that you seek professional advice for your specific medical needs. So now let's talk about how you can use the functions in Zoom to ask questions, interact with us, and get technical support from our team, and also adjust the view of your screen. To adjust the view of the slide and the presenter, please adjust the slider between the two screens. The slider is where the circle is pointing. This will be an interactive lecture. You will not be on camera, but we do encourage you to participate as much as possible. Polls will appear on screen at various times throughout the talk for you to anonymously respond. The chat box is disabled for now, but will be turned on for you to engage with our chat box questions. So please see the arrow indicating the chat button. So next, I'm pointing the arrow to the Q&A button on your screen, which is where to go if you have any technical difficulties or questions for our speaker today or for our team. So we will be monitoring your questions and we'll try to respond to all of them. Please note your responses are only visible to our team for HIPAA compliance. Now that we've covered the housekeeping items, I want to share more about the Institute for Health and Healing. We offer integrative medicine clinical care that combines the best of conventional medicine with proven healing practices from around the world to serve the whole person. We have integrative medical clinics located in San Francisco, Santa Rosa, Roseville, Sacramento, and San Carlos that offer integrative physician care, psychotherapy, acupuncture, nutrition, chiropractic care, and massage therapy. Many of our services are covered by insurance. We offer these free Healing Perspectives events multiple times throughout the year, with the next one coming up next month in May, and we have 2 more this fall for you. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Gina Serraiocco, MD. She is board certified in both internal and integrative medicine. She is a passionate health advocate, national speaker, and avid medical researcher. Dr. Serraiocco completed her internal medicine residency training at Santa Clara Valley Medical Center and, more recently, the prestigious Andrew Weil Integrative Medicine Fellowship. She's also certified in functional medicine and trained in mindfulness meditation and Reiki, and studied with traditional healers in the Yucatan Peninsula. Dr. Serraiocco currently sees patients at the Sutter Palo Alto Medical Foundation, where she integrates complementary and alternative therapies with conventional medicine, with an emphasis on the mind-body connection. Now it is my honor to welcome my friend and today's speaker, Dr. Gina Serraiocco. Dr. Serraiocco.
Thank you so much, Akil, and to all of IHH. I've been so looking forward to giving this talk today. Before we start, I'd like to dedicate this talk to all of the cancer survivors watching today. We did the best that we knew how and still got cancer. By showing up today, you know that we can still optimize our bodies going forward. I'd also like to dedicate this to all you empowered individuals who know that while we can't control everything in life, there's a heck of a lot we can control, and we're owning that part by showing up today. So let's start in beautiful Ikaria, Greece. This is well known as a blue zone, where its residents commonly live to a healthy 100. Something about this island supports all the features of longevity. Well, what if those features are the same ones that can prevent cancer and even cure cancer? This is Mr. Stamatis Moraitis, a Greek war veteran who came to the US in 1943 and lived the American dream, until he was diagnosed with a really aggressive lung cancer confirmed by several specialists. He was given less than 9 months to live. Rather than spending the little money he had for treatment, he chose to return to Ikaria, Greece to be buried with his ancestors and to leave the money for his family. Well, long story short, he never died of cancer. His cancer went completely away and he ended up living to 102. Did something awaken his immune system to beat cancer? I'm intrigued by that possibility. These two publications cover over 3,500 patient cases from 800 medical journals of spontaneous remission of disease and cancer. Actually, most of these cases were not spontaneous at all. Each survivor took action steps to support their immune system. So here's a theory. An immune system that beats disease can prevent it in the first place. An immune system that beats disease can prevent it in the first place. And today you'll see why I think this is true as we go through about a week's worth of information in the next 1 hour. So preventing disease starts with awareness, empowerment, and then taking action. So what's the current state? In 2022, this year, roughly 2 million cancer cases are predicted in the US alone. The top 4 are breast, prostate, lung, and colon. About 600,000 cancer deaths are projected, and thus there's a 1 in 3 risk of developing cancer and a 1 in 5 risk of dying from cancer. That's pretty heavy. So let's learn how to tip the odds in our favor. So it turns out that genetics only account for about 10 to 30% of cancer risk. It's lifestyle and environment that influences the rest. Furthermore, the entire field of epigenetics is showing us that our lifestyle influences genetic expression. So we are not our genes. And knowing this, the World Health Organization states that at least 50% of cancers can be prevented. And I agree. So here's our research-backed map for cancer prevention today. We'll cover a lot about how to protect our body and then some key things to avoid or minimize. Remember that vitality is all about balance. So keep that in mind as we go around the map. This talk will lean slightly towards the data on hormones and breast cancer since it's the #1 cancer in women and really it has the most research to guide us. First stop on our map is screening. Fortunately, we can detect most cancers before they become a major problem. But we got to show up for testing. So work with your healthcare provider to personalize a plan. There are so many nuances, exceptions, and alternatives to what I've listed here. And this brings us to our first poll interactive. Am I fully up to date on all of my cancer screening? Yes, absolutely. No, I've been procrastinating. I don't know. We're getting some really good responses here. I think we can go ahead and share the results. Wow, these are blowing up. This is great. So it looks like, yes, absolutely. For most of you, we can stop sharing now. But for those of you who said no, and I don't know, some of you are already primed to take your first action step. Screening means early detection and treatment. And this is something we can all take advantage of. Next stop on our cancer prevention map is air. What's in the 11,000 liters of air that we breathe each day? And what does it have to do with cancer? Well, in the case of tobacco smoke, a lot. Smoking or secondhand smoke exposure still causes 90% of lung cancer, and it's the #1 cause of cancer death. Tobacco is also linked to 12 additional cancers in the body, noted here. And so it's never too late to quit and ask for help when you're ready. But what you might not be aware of is that many of these same cancers are increased with breathing in any burned chemical or byproduct of burning, such as in traffic and industrial pollution, wildfire smoke, candles. And the risk can be increased by as much as 25% with the highest exposure. So this brings us to our first action slide. What can we do? Well, certainly avoid cigarette smoke, but really any smoke. Use that recirculation car button in busy traffic. And an air quality index like airnow.gov can be helpful during wildfires and smoggy days. In case you must go outside on a yellow or a red day, keep that well-fitting N95 or KN95 mask handy. Note that a regular cotton or surgical mask will not do anything to block the microparticles in the pollution. A high-efficiency particulate air filter, a HEPA filter, in the house is a bonus. And limit the regular use of candles, incense, scented fresheners, which are all toxic. Taking these small steps daily can add up to big protection against cancer over a lifetime. Next on our cancer prevention map is movement. We typically talk about how movement is important for the heart and for brain health, but did you know that exercise also decreases the risk of 13 cancers, and it's protective even if you don't lose weight? This was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in an article that studied 1.44 million Americans and their habits. And the cancers prevented by exercise are highlighted here. Now, just for frame of reference, women who exercise the most have about 20% less breast cancer than women who exercise the least. Now, why would exercise decrease cancer risk? Well, from here, I'm going to segue into the lymphatic system, which is part of the immune system. It's a network of tissues, organs, fluid, vessels. And one of its many roles is to remove cancer-causing waste and metabolic byproducts from the body. It's kind of like the sewer system of the body. So why am I mentioning it here with exercise? Well, unlike the heart that pumps the blood around, the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. It relies on your muscle movement to move the fluid around. This is why I'm using a sit-stand desk right now, and I'm constantly doing stretches and squats between consults. We've got to move throughout the day to keep our 4 to 5 liters of lymph flowing in a healthy way. So here's a cool fact. Deep breathing through movement of the rib cage and the diaphragm helps to circulate lymph. So I'd like to take a moment to teach you a really great breath work exercise, the 4-7-8 breath, inspired by Dr. Andrew Weil. It's a wonderful way to release stress and anxiety and move the lymph around. So the rhythm of this healing breath is a 4-count inhale through the nose, a 7-count pause, and an 8-count audible exhale through the mouth. Now, if you want to do this like a true yogi, you'll exhale with a shh sound. So I invite you to do 3 of these together with me. When you're ready, let's fully exhale, and I'll count with my fingers. In through the nose. Pause. Exhale. Shh. In through the nose for 4. Pause for 7. Out for 8. Shh. 1 on your own. Shh. Lovely. Thank you for joining me on that. We just relaxed it, shifted our brain into study mode, and moved that lymphatic around. So movement also helps by reducing insulin resistance, which then reduces cancer risk. What I'm about to show you happens in about 50% of the US population, both in overweight and normal weight individuals as well. When we eat a generally unhealthy diet, high in refined carbohydrates, it can cause high levels of glucose in the blood, increasing the demand for insulin. And over the time, the insulin receptors become resistant. This causes high constant glucose and insulin levels, which leads to a cascade of inflammation, high IGF levels, DNA damage, which ultimately increases cancer risk. IGF is a growth factor, and high IGF can stimulate cancer growth, especially in the breast, colon, pancreas, and liver. So here's what we can do. In terms of moving around that lymphatic sewer system, we've just got to voluntary. The movement does not need to be heroic. Deep breathing, yoga, walking, but it's the cardio and the weight training and the sweat that will improve insulin resistance the most. Now, how do you know if your body is managing insulin and sugar appropriately? Blood tests. So take a close look, because the numbers I've listed here are for optimal metabolism, not just okay, normal, borderline, but optimal. This is the level at which you prevent the inflammation cascade leading to cancer. And you get here with exercise and good food choices. Now, as a reminder, you'll get an emailed link to this recorded talk tomorrow, so you can come back and study these targets after your next set of blood tests. Next on our cancer prevention map is food, drink, and sleep. So before we talk about what we eat, let's talk about the timing of what we eat. So get ready for another poll. A prospective study of over 40,000 Europeans linked a 1.5 times increased risk of breast cancer and an over doubling risk of prostate cancer linked to eating after what time? Great. We got some pretty even distribution here. Wow, the numbers are coming in. There's a close tie between 7:30, 9:30, 7:30, 9:30. Let's go ahead and share the results. And pretty split numbers here between 7:30 and 9:30. Good. Well, moving on here, the goal number is actually before 9:30. So there's a marked increase in cancer with regular late night eating. Late night eating interferes with glucose metabolism, leading to a rise in insulin resistance and IGF-1, thus cancer risk. So interestingly, this finding is independent of the overnight fasting interval, body weight, or quality of the food. So it really has to do with the late night eating itself. Now, even though this study put a cutoff at 9:30 for cancer risk, most studies suggest that we stop eating 3 hours prior to bedtime for optimal all-around health, not just cancer prevention. I do frequently get questions about the different forms of fasting. At a minimum, a 12-hour overnight fast is recommended for most individuals. Fasting results in decreased insulin, glucose, IGF-1, inflammation, also improved autophagy, which is the body's process of cleaning up dead and dying cells. I've personally chosen a 16-hour overnight fast, restricting my eating to an 8-hour window most days of the week. But talk to your doctor before starting any of these. And so, what about sleep? And what does sleep have to do with cancer risk? Well, it turns out a lot. This was demonstrated in a large prospective study of 35,000 women between 40 and 79, and they were followed for 19 years. What we found is that women who slept on average less than 7 hours per night had a 49% increased risk of breast cancer, and sleeping on average less than 6 hours per night, 98% increased risk of breast cancer. So sleep duration is important. Effective sleep requires preservation of the circadian rhythm and melatonin levels. So melatonin is so much more than a sleep hormone or a circadian rhythm hormone. It's a very powerful anti-cancer immune hormone. In fact, there are over 3,000 studies published on the role of melatonin and its anti-cancer effects. And studies show that higher natural melatonin levels are linked to lower breast cancer risk. So what do we have control in this? The good news is that we can actually increase our own melatonin levels. And the first thing you can do is set a good circadian rhythm by greeting the early morning sun. Take your green tea outside for a few minutes. Let the natural sun meet your eyes. Repeat this at noon if you can. Next, the harmful artificial blue light coming from electronics and modern fixtures. We would like to decrease exposure. The blue light blocks the brain from being able to produce melatonin properly. Now, in theory, everyone would just turn off the lights, turn off your electronics after sunset. But being kind of practical and in real life, using blue light blocking glasses kind of makes more sense to me. I put these on every evening if I'm working late, if I've got electronics on, and these help to support my melatonin levels. They block the blue light that that affect the pineal gland's production. And also I get a way better night's sleep. Research also shows us that meditating before bed also increases melatonin levels, in addition to helping with stress and quality sleep. So establishing a short nightly practice has a lot of benefits. Okay, so we started out the segment talking about meal timing, the importance of avoiding late night eating, which segued into the power of melatonin as an anti-cancer hormone. Let's go back and focus on food specifically. Hands down, the Mediterranean diet has the most research supporting longevity and cancer reduction. What do you see here? Mostly stuff grown directly by Mother Nature and not from a factory. And when you eat this way, you decrease cancer. Lots of colorful vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds. In fact, studies show that when the Mediterranean diet is supplemented with either an extra serving of nuts or extra virgin olive oil, we see a 41% and a 61% reduced breast cancer risk. So when you hear that food is medicine, this is what we're talking about. At the end of the hour, you'll be invited to a class series called Cancer Care in Your Kitchen, led by an absolutely amazing nutritionist, Sharon Meyer. And I encourage you to check it out. Eat mostly lots and lots of colorful, diverse plants directly from Mother Earth. Now, there are some foods that can cause confusion in terms of cancer risk. So I'll do my best to clarify those next, starting with meat. In 2015, the World Health Organization announced that processed meat is a group 1 cancer-causing agent, same category as cigarettes. Think hot dogs, salami, pepperoni, bacon. These are all known to increase cancer risk. It's the nitrites in these processed meats that are converted to nitrosamines, which are carcinogenic, and they're responsible for about 13% of bowel cancers. What about unprocessed meats, like steak? Research shows us that red meat is carcinogenic, especially in causing colon and prostate cancer, 2 of the top 3 cancers in men. But a lot of the risk might have to do with the way that we cook the meat. High temperature cooking and charring any meat produces cancer-causing chemicals. That is so unfortunate. But am I still going to my friend's barbecue next weekend? Of course. So here's what I do to balance out the risk. Use lower temperatures to avoid blackening. Eat with lots of cruciferous vegetables like a cabbage coleslaw, like kale salad. And marinate meats in olive oil and lots of spices, oregano, thyme, rosemary. All 3 of these steps have been proven to decrease some of the carcinogen formation while cooking meat. So speaking of barbecues, I've got some sobering facts to share about alcohol too. So ask yourself if these things might be true. Just 1 alcoholic drink per day has been proven to increase cancer risk, increase estrogen levels in women and men, shrink the brain, trigger atrial fibrillation, a heart rhythm issue, increase all-cause mortality, or all of the above. Now, if you picked all of the above, you are correct. And this might be a good time for another one of those 4, 7, 8 breaths. So Alcohol increases cancer risk in almost every part of the body it touches, with just one drink on average per day. The mouth, the voice box, throat, esophagus, liver, cancer, and also breast cancer because it increases estrogen levels. So for my entire medical career, I heard the rhetoric that a daily serving of alcohol was okay and maybe even good. Well, when we look at the research, it's really not. A landmark paper in The Lancet 2018 concludes, alcohol increases the risk of all-cause mortality and of cancer specifically, and the level of consumption that minimizes health loss is 0. There is no amount of regular alcohol intake that improves health. That's just the sad truth. So when I'm asked for advice, I generally recommend honoring that daily ritual with something else, like maybe a splash of pomegranate juice with sparkling water in a fun glass, and add a dash of magnesium powder for stress reduction and relaxation. Save the alcohol for mindful occasions and remember that life is all about balance. I do enjoy a fine Cabernet now and then. All right. Now let's tackle the very controversial subject of dairy. Does dairy increase breast cancer risk? This study followed over 50,000 North American Adventists for 9 years, a population that's about 40% vegetarian and vegan, so that's handy for comparison. What the researchers found is that there's an especially strong rise in the risk of breast cancer with just 5.3 ounces of milk per day. That's not a whole lot. It didn't matter whether it was low fat or whole fat. This conclusion is supported by multiple other large studies. Interesting, some of the studies suggest that fermented dairy, like yogurt and kefir, are not quite as bad as regular milk. So does organic make a difference? Unfortunately, no studies have looked at that specifically, but I have a hunch that it would make some difference. So a study out of Emory University in 2019 demonstrated that bovine growth hormone is 20 times higher in conventional versus organic milk. Now remember, even organic dairy contains hormones because dairy comes from a lactating animal by definition. But hormones are clearly added to most non-organic milk. This study also revealed that 60% of conventional milk was positive for antibiotics and pesticides. So I favor choosing organic if consuming any form of dairy. I know what you're thinking. What about calcium intake then if we minimize dairy? Well, look at all of these high calcium containing foods here. Broccoli, spinach, white beans, oranges. You can replace milk with calcium-enriched almond, hemp, or oat milk. So personally, I mostly avoid daily dairy now, but I don't sweat it if I want a latte or indulge in occasional cheese or yogurt. It's all about balance. Notice that the top non-dairy sources of calcium are actually soy-based. Soy milk, tofu, soybeans, edamame. So this brings us to one of the biggest myths in cancer nutrition. Does soy cause cancer? The answer is no. In fact, it's quite protective. For young women, adolescent intake of soy when young leads to a 21% reduction of postmenopausal cancer. Soy is protective for young women. The data is neutral in postmenopausal women, so no reason to avoid it. And in men, soy is protective against colon and prostate cancer. Now, how is this possible? Well, soy contains plant estrogens, phytoestrogens, that are actually weaker than human estrogen. So when the phytoestrogens sit on the estrogen receptor, they actually block the cancerous activity of the stronger human estrogen. This is how soy decreases cancer risk. And for the breast cancer survivor watching today, this is especially protective for you too. The Journal of the American Medical Association states that among women with breast cancer, soy food consumption was significantly associated with a decreased risk of death and recurrence. Two additional studies in breast cancer specifically reveal a 21% reduced all-cause mortality, 60% decreased breast cancer recurrence in women on tamoxifen, in those who eat the most soy compared to the least soy. So whole organic soy foods like tofu, tempeh, edamame are a great source of calcium, great source of protein, and cancer prevention. So here's our summary action slide for food, drink, and sleep in terms of preventing cancer. Eat mostly plants. Any food from a garden or a tree is likely going to protect you. We saw how extra olive oil and nuts and soy were beneficial. Fermented dairy in small amounts might be okay. Let's limit the adult intake of milk. There's no amount of daily alcohol that's helpful, and let's limit processed and red meat. And when you do eat it, lower the temps and definitely take the time to marinate with olive oil and lots of spices to decrease carcinogen formation. And in terms of optimizing circadian rhythm, let your eyes greet the morning sun after an overnight fast. Try finish eating by 8 p.m. and optimize those melatonin levels by turning off electronics after sunset or perhaps wearing those blue light blockers. End the day with a melatonin boosting meditation to ensure a good night of at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Now, which one of these can you get started with today? Just one. Life is a marathon, not a sprint, so we've got to pace ourselves. Now for a 10,000-foot view of hormones and gut. We just talked about soy, which is a natural plant estrogen, but what about estrogen from prescription medications? About 25% of young women are taking oral birth control pills, which are generally combinations of synthetic estrogens and progestins. It turns out, in terms of cancer, there's a little bad news, but mostly good news. There's approximately one extra breast cancer diagnosed for every 7,700 women using hormone contraception for 1 year. This was in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it's actually a pretty small number. And this association disappears within 2 to 5 years of stopping contraceptives. Now, the upside is that women who have ever used birth control have a 30% lower risk of endometrial cancer, up to 50% lower risk of ovarian cancer, and up to 20% lower risk of colon cancer. For the most part, this benefit increases the longer a woman is on a birth control pill, and the benefit persists for decades after stopping them. So all in all, I don't think a woman should run out and start birth control pills just for cancer reduction, because there's other side effects to consider. But it's a really nice upside to know about if a woman chooses to take them. What about menopausal hormone replacement therapy? In 2009, a very large meta-analysis was published in The Lancet. What they found was one additional breast cancer case in every 50 users after 5 years of combined estrogen and progesterone hormone replacement. They found one additional breast cancer in every 200 users after 5 years of estrogen-only hormone replacement. Now, these are generally only used in women who have had a hysterectomy. So what can we do to mitigate this? Well, note that more than one alcoholic drink per night nearly doubles the risk of breast cancer on hormone replacement. So eliminating alcohol is an easy way to mitigate risk when on replacement therapy. It's also important to acknowledge that there are many compelling reasons that a woman might decide to start hormone replacement within the first 5 years of menopause, including bioidentical hormones. So a few of the research proven ones are here. Decreased fractures, decreased heart disease, decreased dementia, improved quality of life, hot flashes, sexual function, sleep. So really, we've got to look at the pros and cons and personalize for each woman. Limiting alcohol can decrease the risk of additional breast cancer, and a healthy weight minimizes inflammation and reduces the excess estrogen that's produced by belly fat. Now, no matter where the estrogen is coming from, we want to make sure that the body is getting rid of it or metabolizing it properly. And a healthy liver and gut will help to shift the estrogen metabolites into a less cancerous form, optimizing what's called the 2:16 hydroxyestrone ratio. A healthy gut will also decrease unfavorable recycling and reabsorption of estrogen by bacteria producing an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. Now, if you want to optimize all these sciencey things happening in the gut, here's the secret. Simply eat more cruciferous vegetables: broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, arugula, Brussels sprouts. If I could only take one group of vegetables with me to a desert island, it would be the cruciferous vegetables in terms of bang for the buck for the immune system, the liver, the gut, the heart, the brain, and cancer health. High fiber diets and probiotic foods also keep the gut healthy. Now, 70% of our immune system is actually in the gut. So gut health equates to immune health. And so not surprisingly, a healthy gut is linked to a decrease in the top 4 cancers. Next on our prevention map, highlighting a little bit more in our environment. This study of 10 babies was published by the Environmental Working Group in 2005, and it really woke me up. Researchers took umbilical cord blood from 10 American babies before they were even born and studied them for chemicals. Hundreds of chemicals were detected. Of the 287 chemicals detected in umbilical cord blood, 180 are known to cause cancer in humans and animals. 217 are toxic to the brain and nervous system. 208 cause birth defects or abnormal development in the animal tests. From this study, we see that an ounce of prevention now actually benefits you and the next generation. Where are these chemicals coming from? Everywhere. There are over 80,000 chemicals approved in the US, and less than 5,000 of them have been studied for human safety. Many chemicals are approved in the US when not approved in Europe. We're talking industrial waste, cash register receipts, plastic food containers, makeup, personal care products, perfluorochemicals in Gore-Tex and Teflon cookware, Scotchgard. Now, I admit that this slide was meant to scare you a little bit, to wake up. Now, we can't control everything, so where are we going to start? Probably the most important opportunity is water. The human body is made up of 60% water. We drink it, we bathe in it, but what's in it? Let's take a look. This is the Environmental Working Group Tap Water Database, and you're going to want to check this out at the end of the talk. Plugging in the Mountain View zip code where I lived for 10 years, I found out that there are 14 contaminants detected that exceed Environmental Working Group guidelines. And shockingly, 11 of the 14 are known to cause cancer. Now, a little amount of many different toxic chemicals can add up to a pretty big toxic effect. So the good news is that we can get out most of the chemicals by just filtering the water first. A regular activated carbon filter will take care of most contaminants, but not all. And a more expensive reverse osmosis filter may be needed for the rest. Taking the extra step to filter your own water is a great investment to support overall health and way better than plastic water bottles. The next biggest opportunity is the food that we eat. With farmers under pressure to get more product out of the land, there are over 400 agricultural pesticides used in the US, many of which are banned in Europe. So does organic food matter when it comes to cancer risk? Absolutely. In this Journal of the American Medical Association 2019 study, researchers looked at 69,000 French participants over 4 years. They found a higher frequency of organic food consumption was associated with a 25% reduced risk of cancer. There was a drastic reduction in all lymphomas and breast cancer. So here's how to take action. Try to buy organic dairy and meat when you can, since agricultural chemicals tend to concentrate in the saturated animal fat. The Environmental Working Group also publishes a yearly Dirty Dozen list. These are the dozen most heavily pesticided vegetables and fruits in the US, and the 2022 list just came out a couple weeks ago. If you're unable to purchase organic, studies show that soaking in a baking soda or salt solution can be somewhat helpful in decreasing the total pesticide load. So do the best that you can. Any vegetable is still better than no vegetable. And here's the EWG Clean 15 list. These products are usually grown with minimal chemicals, and I've highlighted the most immune supportive veggies on this list: cabbage, onions, avocados, asparagus, mushrooms. So pertaining to our environment, let's filter our water. Let's eat organically when we can. Avoid artificial sweeteners. Actually, another study just came out last month, again proving that these can cause cancer. Use a small amount of stevia instead if you must. And avoid plastics touching your food. The next biggest opportunity is anything that touches your body. So the Environmental Working Group website is a great supportive place to get started on your journey of detoxifying the rest of your environment, particularly makeup and personal care products, cleaning products, and cookware. So I encourage you to check this out after the talk and find some safer products that you like. And probably the most importantly, in terms of reducing stress about this whole toxin situation, is the reminder that our liver is designed to get toxins out of the body. Let's try to minimize the junk going in. Let's also keep our liver tuned up to be able to poop out what we need to get out. So in order to do this, the liver needs, guess what? Wait for it. Vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables are the best thing you can do for your liver. A steamed broccoli, an arugula kale salad. Garlic and onions are also important and also protein. Food is medicine. Now, another overlooked of preventable cause is infections, and we don't often think about that. According to the Lancet Oncology and World Health Organization, approximately 20% of cancers worldwide are caused by infections. So listed here are some of them. Now, I'd like to point out that exposure does not necessarily mean cancer. For example, 90% of us have been exposed to Epstein-Barr virus through kissing and contact, but less than 1% develop Hodgkin lymphoma. So we can't always avoid coming into contact with infections, but a healthy immune system can ward off most cancer-triggering infections. So my favorite poll of the day is coming up. Get ready. Which supplement has the most research in supporting the immune system against infections, including EBV, hepatitis B and C, HPV, H. pylori, even COVID, and also decreasing cancer? So, wow, the numbers are pouring in. It's an even tie between vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin C, vitamin D. We've got some people wanting EGCG, which is in green tea. Few votes for melatonin, multivitamin. Okay, I think we've kind of got a quorum, so we can share the results. It looks like vitamin D just edges out vitamin C, And so for those of you who said vitamin D, you are correct. So actually, this was tricky because all of these increase the immune system, boost the immune system. All of these actually have some data in their role against cancer as well. But vitamin D has by far the most data, both in support against viruses and against cancer. So let's get specific about this. Vitamin D levels must be checked. And the goal is between 30 to 50 nanograms per milliliter. This is optimal. Now, in my 17 years of practice in Silicon Valley, I have found that it takes the average patient 2,000 units of vitamin D daily to even come close to 30. But the actual dose is highly variable on nutrition, sun exposure, genetics. This is why you have to test levels. Vitamin D should be taken with a fat-containing meal, such as avocado, olive oil, etc. Now, it turns out in order for vitamin D to be activated, magnesium is required. And about 75% of the US population is deficient in magnesium. So I usually recommend these two nutrients together. Of course, the most natural source of vitamin D is the sun, but the vast majority of individuals in my practice simply don't get enough. And on the other hand, too much can contribute to skin cancer. So it's a delicate balance between too much, too little, and it's kind of dependent on your skin type. You want to avoid the pink. You want to avoid the burn. Now note, sunscreen blocks vitamin D formation in the skin. So a supplement is still likely needed if you're using sunscreen with sun exposure. So optimize our immune system to fight cancer-causing infections. And you'll see a theme develop here. Eat mostly colorful plants. I'm going to do a shout out for mushrooms, particularly maitake and shiitake. These mushrooms have beta-glucans, which are highly immune supportive. Movement, any kind of movement. Let's get our lymphatics flowing. Sleep, circadian rhythm, and melatonin. Vaccines, talk about this with your primary when you make your appointment. There are vaccines against hepatitis B and HPV. Stress reduction, which is up next. And of course, vitamin D. So last stop on our cancer prevention journey, we're now turning our attention inward. In terms of assessing the mood's impact on cancer, we turn to the rapidly developing field of psychoneuroimmunology, how the mind informs the brain, how the brain then influences the immune system to impact our overall biology. There are over 170 research articles linking stress with cancer, particularly in the case of a divorce or death of a spouse or child. What these studies suggest is that how we react to a trigger is actually more important than the trigger itself. Feeling stuck and alone in a situation suppresses the immune system, and we all need a healthy outlet for processing and releasing charged emotions. So next is going to be our first chat box interactive. So get ready to type in your answer, though the answers are only visible to the host for privacy reasons. Take a moment to recall a tough issue or situation that you're dealing with right now. Some emotion that you're suppressing or that's feeling stuck. If you follow your intuition on the best way to get that stuck emotion out, what would it be? I've put some examples here. Write it in the chat box. We're just looking for any way to move that energy within your mind body. Working out, mindfulness, prayer, talking to good friends. Wow, lots of good answers here. Therapy, get a divorce, dance, laughter, singing, biking, tai chi. Wow, blowing up the chat box is amazing. Tapping, qigong, music, lots of prayer coming up. Beautiful. Making time for moving the energy and expressing the emotion is medicine. All right. Thank you. Now, last but not least, spirituality. The quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. The mind, the body, the spirit are connected. But how often do we actually talk about spirit? And how might we go about measuring spirituality's impact on cancer? Well, the Nurses' Health Study started in 1992 and followed 74,000 women over 16 years. We all have our own way of connecting to something greater, and this study happened to focus on church. Now, I want to be sensitive to the fact that some people might have a very visceral response to the mention of religion or church. I certainly did at one point, but let's just go with this for a moment. What researchers found was a direct correlation between church going and health. In fact, those going to church more than once per week had a 33% decrease all-cause mortality and a 21% decrease cancer mortality. Now, I know what you're thinking, churchgoers just must be healthier, but the researchers thought about this, so they corrected for alcohol use, exercise, weight, etc. So it wasn't about lifestyle. There's something else about churchgoers that translates into an awakened immune system and an awakened body. And the research found that it was due to optimism. Optimism is the most important mediator, something trusting in something outside of just the physical realm. So what I find interesting to ponder is whether going to church might actually be a surrogate marker for an individual's spirituality. And might this spirituality be as effective in health if practiced individually through meditation, prayer, self-inquiry, inner contemplation? How might you deepen the connection that you already have? How might you get started on this journey after being closed off for a really long time? For me, that portal was books. So I've listed some of my favorite ones here. Your portal might be something totally different. So this is just an invitation for curiosity, deepening your own connection to anything greater than just flesh and bone. Some call it nature, universe, divinity, the great mystery. How will you deepen your own personal religion? Research hints that it might just decrease your cancer risk as much as exercise. So we just did a whirlwind trip around this research-proven wheel of vitality. And remember Mr. Moraitis? He did all this unintentionally when he moved back to Greece, and his cancer disappeared. So short of us all moving to a blue zone, which would be nice, what can we do to adopt a blue zone, cancer-reduced lifestyle here and now? So as we do our final review, get ready for the most important part of this whole hour. Think about what is your next action step to living cancer-free, and listen to your intuition as we do the review. Screening. Are you up to date with screening? Schedule that overdue appointment right after the talk. Air. We'll do our best to protect ourselves against smoke and pollution. Movement. Let's keep moving throughout the day to keep that lymphatic system flowing and decrease insulin resistance. Food. After a 12 or more hour overnight fast, eat mostly plants and finish eating by 8 p.m. Drink. Let's filter our water. Avoid daily milk and daily alcohol. Sleep. Honor your natural circadian rhythm with morning and noon sunlight and blue light blocking at night. Hormones. Whether taking hormones or not, we want to make sure that the gut is primed to metabolize them optimally. A healthy gut decreases cancer. Cruciferous vegetables, fiber, probiotic foods. Environment. Any chemical that we inhale, ingest, or touch has the potential to influence our body's immune system. So we choose filtered, organic, and clean products when possible. We also remember that our liver can detox many of the chemicals that slip through, but it can only work if we supply it with the right healthy vegetables and protein. Mood and spirit. we remember the influence of the mind and spirit on physical health, choosing to breathe deeply, meditate, express our emotions, and stay spiritually connected. Life is about balance. You don't have to do all of these. You can start to decrease your cancer risk today just by choosing one or two to work on. This is the time to commit to yourself. Write down your next action step in that chat box right now. You intuitively know where to start, so don't think too hard. Just listen to that inner guide and go ahead and pop it into the chat box. What would you like to do to commit to yourself? Beautiful. Filter water, stop eating earlier, drink a little less, give up some dairy. Wow, they're going so fast. More vitamin D. Yes, vitamin D, 4-7-8 breathing, yoga practice, organic vegetables, optimism, walk more, spirituality, vitamin D. Beautiful. Keep committing to yourself. It just starts with one step at a time. I want to thank you for being here today. I'd like to invite you to continue your health journey by signing up for my free newsletter at GinaSerraioccoMD.com. This upcoming May edition will include additional cancer preventive pearls, product brands that I trust, and answers to some of your Q&A questions that we don't get to today. So you can sign up now. My social media handles are the same at Gina Serraiocco MD, and I'll get that started again soon. And I look forward to connecting with you. Let's stay empowered together. Thank you. Back to you, Akil.
Thank you, Dr. Serraiocco, for that wonderful presentation. So there are over 3,000 people on the call. So thank you to each of you for joining us today and being a part of this group. So before we go into the Q&A, there's been a lot of great questions, just a couple of announcements. So if you found this lecture beneficial, we invite you to subscribe to our monthly e-newsletter, Inside Healing. Each month, you'll receive wellness tips and videos, updates on upcoming events, and information about Sutter IHH care centers. So please use the QR code or link in the chat box to subscribe. You should also get a pop-up on your browser after the event as well to subscribe. You can also follow us on our social media through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to stay updated. So your health education doesn't have to stop today. If you'd like to work more in depth with the tools that Dr. Serraiocco shared, please join the waitlist for Sharon Meyer's virtual class later this month and in June. Sharon's 4-week class is designed to help you explore nutritional tools to enhance disease prevention, cope with a cancer diagnosis, or support someone going through treatment. In this interactive group class, you will learn the hidden power of foods and their impact on your health. Please use the link in the chat or scan the QR code to join the waiting list. Please note that space is limited, so if you'd like to join, please join the waiting list soon. We'll also be back next month for another free virtual event with Dr. William Li, New York Times bestselling author, Harvard-trained physician, and medical researcher. He'll be teaching us about eating to beat chronic disease with some of the most powerful therapeutic foods. So you don't want to miss our next event. And you can use the link in the chat or scan the QR code to register. So now let's go to